I never thought a quick shoulder rub could turn into this, but here we are. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, buckle up, because today's story is one you won't shake off easily. It's loaded with family tension, unexpected turns, and a moment that totally threw me off. Let me set the scene for you. It was just a regular Sunday, one of those chill afternoons where you're ready to kick back. I'd just finished tidying up the living room when my stepson, Jake Carter, walked in, looking like something was bugging him big time. Now hold up. Before you jump to any wild ideas, this isn't that kind of story. Jake's 24, and he's been part of my life for about 6 years now. He's a solid guy. Well, young man, but we've never been super close. It's not like we're at each other's throats or anything, just not the type to chat over burgers about life. I've always given him room to come around on his own, but today, something was off. He looked like he was hurting. When I asked what was up, he mumbled something about tweaking his back at the gym. I'm no expert masseuse, but I've helped my husband, Tom Harris, with his stiff neck a bunch of times. So, without overthinking it, I offered to help Jake out. To my surprise, he said yeah. That right there was my first hint something wasn't normal. We headed to the couch, and I told him to sit tight while I grabbed some cream from the bathroom. When I got back, he was all jittery, fiddling with his hoodie strings, dodging my gaze, the whole deal. I almost asked if he was cool with this, but before I could, he cleared his throat and said, "Thanks, I appreciate it." I started working on his shoulders, keeping it light with small talk about his college classes and gym routine. Then, out of nowhere, it hit. Jake tensed up. Not the usual, oh, that's the spot kind of tense. This was different. His whole body locked up, and when I peeked at his face, he looked like he'd just seen something freaky. I stopped right away. "Jake, you good?" I asked. He paused. Then, in this super tight voice I'd never heard from him before, he said, "I gotta tell you something." That's when everything shifted. The way he said, "I gotta tell you something," sent a shiver down my back. It wasn't just what he said. It was how. His voice was all shaky, like he was about to drop something heavy. I pulled my hands back, suddenly unsure. Was this about me? About Tom? Was he in some kind of mess? My brain started spinning through a million what-ifs. "Okay," I said, keeping my tone steady. "What's going on?" Jake took a deep breath, rubbing his neck like he was trying to keep it together. Just as he opened his mouth, the front door flew open. Tom strolled in, arms full of grocery bags, acting like it was any other day. Whatever Jake was about to spill, gone. He shut down fast. His face went blank like someone hit mute on him. Did I walk in on something?" Tom asked, eyeballing us as he dumped the bags on the kitchen counter. I plastered on a smile. "Nah, just helping Jake with a sore shoulder." Tom nodded, not giving it a second thought. But I couldn't shake this weird vibe. Jake, though? He grabbed his phone like he'd just remembered a hot date. "Actually, I gotta bounce," he muttered. "Jake," I said softly, trying to catch his eye. "You looked like you had something to say." "It's cool," he cut me off quick, his gaze flicking to Tom for a split second before darting away. "Forget it. Catch you later." Before I could push, he was out the door. I just sat there, staring at the empty space, my mind racing to piece it together. Tom, clueless as ever, was already digging into the groceries. No idea about the weird tension hanging around. But I felt it, and I wasn't about to let it go. Something was eating at Jake. Something big. And whatever it was, he didn't want Tom hearing it. But why? What was he so spooked about? The way he froze when Tom walked in wasn't just awkward. It was straight up fear. He was about to tell me something real. Then bam, couldn't. And the way he bolted? That wasn't just a guy in a hurry. That was someone dodging something or someone. I tried to brush it off, but it stuck with me. Later that night, while Tom was washing up, I did something I don't usually do. I shot Jake a text. "Hey, you took off pretty quick earlier. Just checking in. Are you okay?" I stared at my phone, waiting. Nothing. Minutes dragged by. Still nothing. Right when I was about to give up, it buzzed. Yeah, I'm fine. Don't sweat it. That wasn't just him blowing me off. It was him shutting me out. But I wasn't done. Jake, you were about to say something before Tom got home. If you ever need to talk, I'm here. No judgment. This time, no reply at all. That's when I knew I wasn't making it up. Something was seriously off. The next morning, I figured I'd test the waters with Tom, see if he'd picked up on anything. Hey, you noticed anything weird with Jake lately? I asked while pouring coffee. Tom barely glanced up from his phone. Weird how? I hesitated. I couldn't exactly say, oh, how he clammed up the second you walked in, so I kept it chill. I don't know, he just seemed kinda off yesterday. Tom just shrugged. Nah, he's probably just stressing about finals coming up. Finals, huh? Maybe, but this felt way bigger than college pressure. You two are cool though, right? No fights or anything? I pushed. Tom finally set his phone down and gave me a look. Why are you asking? Did he say something? There it was, a little edge in his voice, like he was nervous I'd caught on to something. No, I said fast. Just got a strange feeling, that's all. Tom gave me a sideways glance. Jake and I don't always get along perfect, but we're fine. If something was up, he'd tell me. Would he, though? 'Cause right now, it seemed like Jake was dodging Tom completely. And whatever he wouldn't say in front of him had something to do with my husband. That chat only made me feel worse. Tom's quick brush off, that hint of defensiveness, it didn't add up. The more I mulled it over, the more I was sure Jake wasn't just antsy. He was scared. But of what? Or who? I decided I had to talk to Jake face to face. No more texts, no dodging. So that afternoon, knowing he'd be home, I drove to his place. My heart was thumping as I knocked on his door, half expecting him to ignore me. After a few long seconds, I heard slow footsteps. The door creaked open and Jake peeked out, surprised. Hey, he said, his short buzz cut catching the light. I didn't beat around the bush. Can we talk? I figured he'd shut me down, but he glanced back, like he was checking for someone, then stepped aside to let me in. His apartment was a wreck. Pizza boxes stacked up, hoodies and jeans tossed everywhere, a pile of energy drink cans cluttering the coffee table. This wasn't just typical guy mess. It was someone falling apart. Jake, I said softly, what's going on? He let out a heavy breath, running a hand over his head. I told you, it's nothing. That's not true, I said, locking eyes with him. You were about to tell me something yesterday, but then Tom walked in and you clammed up. That's not nothing. His jaw tightened. I shouldn't have said anything. Why not? I pushed. He hesitated, then shook his head. 'Cause it'll just mess things up more. That word, more, hit me like a brick. Jake, listen. I stepped closer, dropping my voice. You don't have to cover for anyone. If something's wrong, you can tell me. I'll help. I promise. For the first time, he looked like he might actually spill it. His mouth opened slightly, his face all raw, like he was about to let out whatever was eating at him. Then my phone buzzed loud. I flinched, pulling it out of my jacket pocket. It was Tom. The second Jake saw his name on the screen, his face went pale, and he stiffened up like a statue. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about random stress or school. It was about Tom. I let the call go to voicemail, keeping my focus on Jake. His breathing sped up and his hands balled into fists. Jake, I said, barely above a whisper. What's Tom keeping from me? He swallowed hard, looking like he was about to crack. Then, finally, his voice broke. You don't know who he really is. Those words slammed into me like a gut punch. The room felt smaller, my ears buzzing as I tried to process it. That wasn't just some vague, he's not what he seems line. It was a warning, loud and clear. What are you talking about? I asked. His jaw locked tight, and he stared at me like he was stuck between spilling everything and shielding me by staying quiet. That scared me more than anything. I shouldn't have said that, he muttered, shaking his head. Just forget it. Forget it? I stepped closer. No way. You can't drop a bomb like that and expect me to shrug it off. What do you mean I don't know who Tom is? What's he hiding? Jake paused so long I thought he'd shut down again. But then he spoke, voice low. "I found something," he whispered, almost too quiet to hear. The air got heavy. "Found what?" I asked, my pulse racing. He swallowed again. "It was an accident. I was at Dad's place last week, helping him shift some stuff in the garage. He stepped out for a bit, so I was just poking around, And then I saw it." "Saw what?" I pressed. Jake's hands clenched tighter. "A locked box," he said, his voice shaky. I blinked. "A box?" He nodded. "Yeah, not some random toolbox or junk container. This thing was stashed behind some old shelves, like he didn't want anyone finding it." A chill crawled down my spine. "Okay, so what was in it?" I asked. Jake hesitated, but I could tell he wanted to let it out. "I don't know," he admitted, "but whatever it was bad enough that when I asked him about it, he flipped out." "Flipped out how?" I pushed. Jake let out a sharp breath. "He lost it. Snatched it out of my hands before I could even peek inside and started yelling that I had no business touching his stuff. I tried asking what was in there, but he wouldn't say. Just kept telling me it was none of my concern." My stomach sank. Tom could be a lot of things, but secretive and hot-headed? That wasn't the guy I thought I knew. "Jake," I said slowly, "do you think Tom's hiding something from me?" He let out a dry laugh. "I don't think I know." My grip tightened on the couch cushion, my brain spinning. If Tom had huge secrets, what did that mean for me? For us? Then Jake looked me dead in the eyes and said something that made my stomach flip. "You need to find that box." That's when it sank in. I might not be safe in my own house. Jake's words stuck with me. You need to find that box. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I shut my eyes, I pictured Tom freaking out at Jake, his face all twisted. Not just mad, but panicked. Whatever was in that box, it wasn't old receipts or random keepsakes. It was something Tom didn't want anyone to see, and I had to know why. The next morning, I waited till Tom headed out for work, then slipped into the garage. My hands were shaky as I dug through the shelves, shoving aside faded Christmas lights, beat-up storage tubs, and a rusty toolkit. Then I spotted it, tucked behind some wooden crates, just like Jake said. A sleek gray box. I reached for it, my heart pounding. It had a simple lock, just a little clasp with a keyhole. But here's the weird part. The key was already in it. I froze. It felt too easy, like Tom got sloppy, or didn't think anyone would snoop. I took a deep breath, turned the key, and the lock popped open. Inside was a stack of papers, thick documents. Before I could even process them, my eyes locked on something that made my gut twist. A driver's license. But it wasn't just any license. It had Tom's face, same short dark hair, but a totally different name. I snatched it up, my pulse racing. Underneath were more IDs, all with Tom's photo, but different names. Credit cards with names I'd never heard of, even old passports, some so faded he looked barely 30. This wasn't just a hidden savings account or some old debt. This was a whole other life, one Tom never mentioned. I flipped through the papers, my hands shaking. There were court records, name change forms, and then the kicker. A fresh passport from 6 months ago, clipped to a one-way plane ticket leaving next week. I couldn't breathe. Tom was planning to bail. Had he done this before? Started over with someone else, then vanished when it got messy? Then it hit me. Tom didn't snap at Jake out of embarrassment. He was scared Jake was onto him before he could take off. And if I figured it out, would he ditch me too? Right then, I heard a sound. The sharp slam of a car door. Tom was back. I was still holding the box. That noise sent a shock through me. I froze, my brain yelling to hide it, act normal. But before I could move, I heard Tom's boots crunching closer. I had two choices. Call him out right then or play it off and plan my next step. I picked fast. I whipped out my phone, snapped a quick pic of everything in the box, shoved it back behind the crates, and bolted inside. I hit the kitchen just as Tom walked in. His eyes met mine, and for a split second it felt like he could tell something was up. "Hey," he said, tossing his keys on the counter. "What are you doing?" I forced a smile, gripping the sink to keep steady. Just straightening up a little. He nodded, but his stare hung on me a beat too long. He knew, or at least suspected, something. That night, I kept up the act, pretending everything was fine, but my mind was all over the place. I had to figure out who Tom really was, and quick. Later, when Tom crashed out, I locked myself in the bathroom and scrolled through the pics I took. That's when I saw it, buried in the papers. A police report. A missing persons case about a woman. My hands started shaking as I read the name. Didn't ring a bell. But the description gave me chills. She vanished years ago, last seen with a guy who matched Tom's build and look. My heart sank. This wasn't just fake IDs or a shady past. This was way darker. And I was living with him. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I threw some stuff in a backpack, grabbed my keys, and texted Jake. "You were right. I found the box. We gotta go now." He replied in seconds. "I'm coming." I told myself I'd sort out the details later. Who, why, how Tom pulled this off without me noticing. For now, I just needed to get out before he realized I knew. As I peeled out of the driveway, heart hammering, one scary thought wouldn't leave me. If Jake hadn't tipped me off, would I have been next to vanish? And that's how it all went down. Wild, right? I've still got a ton of questions, but one thing's for sure. I'm never ignoring my instincts again. What do you think? Did this keep you hooked? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let me know what stories you want next. I love hearing from you. Till then, stay sharp. You never know who someone really is. Catch you in the next one. This is an artistic and fictional creation intended for both entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to actual people or events is purely coincidental. Some scenes and dialogues in the video are part of a dramatized performance and incorporate elements of grotesque, satire, and exaggeration. The creator stands against discrimination, violence, and hatred. This channel fully complies with YouTube's policies and does not infringe upon copyright laws.